Rain had just quit, but the streets still gleamed like someone had spilled mercury across the Lower East Side. Storefronts sat shuttered, neon bleeding into puddles, and that's when I saw her, standing in a cone of flickering light, denim jacket washed pale, arms cinched tight around a ceramic bowl. Inside, a goldfish turned once, catching the lamp with a flash too clean for that street. She didn't flag me, just waited. I pulled to the curb, window humming down. Need a ride? She gave me one short nod, like she'd already decided hours ago. When she climbed in, the smell of rain came with her, sharper than usual, edged with clay. She set the bowl in her lap, both hands locked steady, like the fish might bolt if she slipped. Where to? She gave an address, uptown, soft voice low, and then added, we might have to change it. I flicked the meter. Tires whispered over the slick road. For the first stretch, she never glanced outside, just locked on the fish, watching the water shiver with every bump in the road. You keep it in that? I asked. Only when we travel. Her answer felt rehearsed, words she'd said to herself before tonight. I didn't push. In this job, you learn which threads not to pull. We hit Houston under a run of green lights. She shifted, not for comfort, but like she was sinking herself with something. At Christie, she leaned forward. Left here. That's not. I know. Just left. I took it. Wipers squeaked once across dry glass before I cut them. Christie looked like a tunnel at that hour, half lit, gates pulled down. Under one lamp, she glanced up, and the fish flicked, throwing another gold flare into the dark. You from around here? I tried. Not anymore. Said it like exile, not moving. At Delancey, she had me turn again, off her original route. Her eyes followed a shadow behind a lit window, grip tightening around the bowl. Water lapped the sides. We wound deeper into brick-heavy streets, bass notes thudding underfoot. Each time a light flashed, she tilted her head, the fish sliding with her, as if the two of them were tuned to some rhythm I couldn't catch. And I kept the cab steady, letting her lead. Some rides aren't about where the wheels stop. They're about what the passenger's carrying. The road narrowed past warehouses, air in the cab shifting, oil, rust, a ghost of diesel. She leaned closer to the glass, breath fogging a circle. What's back here? I asked. Not much, she said. Then softer, yet. A delivery truck half on the sidewalk forced us wide. After that, the noise thinned until all you could hear was the engine and your own breathing. Passing lamps sliced the bowl into shards of gold. Her hands were damp, knuckles white around the rim. I thought about asking where we were really headed, but her focus pinned me quiet. Some nights, silence says more than answers. We slid under an overpass where the lamps hummed orange. Concrete walls sweated rust, a drip falling with a rhythm you could feel in your teeth. That's when she finally raised her eyes from the bowl, only forward, never at me. Instead of taking the ramp up, she told me to stay low, keep following the road beneath the bridge. My headlights found a narrow strip of street, loading docks to one side, chain link fence on the other. Beyond, water caught the sodium glow. East River, maybe. Right, she murmured. Voice steady, like she'd rehearsed this too. We moved slow, past a doorway with a single bulb burning. A man in a wool cap stood inside, smoking, not blinking as we rolled by. She didn't look at him, just whispered, not far now. I checked the meter. Ride wasn't cheap anymore. But her tone left no room for arguing. What's at the end? I asked. You'll see. Her eyes flicked from the bowl to the street, running 2 clocks at once. The fish mirrored her, sliding sharp to one side. Then the road bent, and buildings pressed in again. A mural of a blue whale peeled from brick, its tail cracked like old paint on skin. She sat straighter. Here. Slow. I eased off the gas. She scanned the block, matching it against something in her head. Then she pointed me down a narrow cut, walls close enough to scrape my mirrors. Graffiti layered on metal gates, curling like years stacked over years. At the corner, a busted traffic signal blinked yellow into emptiness. She lifted her hand, steady now. Left. The street dipped, and the river's smell came sharper. Wet concrete, algae, tide pushing heavy against the bulkhead. Keep going, she said. And I did, deeper into streets that felt like they'd forgotten the city existed. The buildings thinned until a lone lamppost lit the way, moths circling slow inside its glow. Under it, the fish flared again, too bright for a thing so small. She watched it like it might vanish if she blinked. I started to ask, is it? It's fine. She cut in, sharp but quiet. We curved behind an abandoned warehouse. A side door hung open, slice of light spilling onto broken pavement. Voices drifted, 3, maybe 4. She didn't react, just said, keep moving. The road ended in AT. To the left, orange glow from the bridge. To the right, boarded buildings. Right, she ordered. I turned. She leaned forward then, jacket brushing the glass. Faint smell of detergent and rain-damp fabric. We rolled past shuttered docks, padlocks dangling, air heavier here. Old wood, stale coffee grounds. The fish drifted now, hardly swimming. She checked it once, then scanned the street like she was lining up signals only she could read. At the block's end, a chain cut across the road. I braked. This is it, she whispered. She didn't move, just stared at something past my shoulder. When I followed her gaze in the mirror, the street looked empty. Then, after a pause too long, she said, we'll go on in a minute. So we sat, meter ticking, engine idling low. Outside, the stillness pressed in, the kind that never holds for long. She shifted the bowl slightly, water tapping against the rim. The goldfish made a slow arc, shadow wobbling on the ceramic. Finally, she said, go. No direction, just that. Only way forward meant lifting the chain. I met her eyes in the mirror. Steady. It's not locked, she added. I got out. Night air cut colder than the cab's heat. The chain was greasy under my hands. Padlock hung there, shut but not latched, like someone wanted it to look secure without actually being. I lifted it, stepped aside as the cab rolled through, then hooked it back. When I climbed in again, she hadn't moved, still cradling the bowl, eyes on the fish. The road beyond was narrower, asphalt breaking into gravel patches. Warehouses loomed with windows blown or boarded. You been here before? I asked. Not like this. Her answer stuck, heavier than the night. We passed under a busted streetlight swaying in the breeze, its casing rattling like hollow bones. She leaned to the window, then told me, turn left. The alley dead-ended at a loading dock, metal barrels lined against the wall catching drips from a crooked gutter. The smell of river and rust cut sharper here. No farther, she said. I stopped. Headlights stretched shadows long across the brick. She opened the door, bowl still in her hands, but didn't step clear right away. Her eyes fixed on a dark corner by the dock. Nothing but shadow to me. You want me to? No, she snapped quick. Stay. Boots scraped on concrete as she moved off. The fish swayed with each step, gold flicking in and out of my beams. She crouched, set the bowl down, hand resting on the rim like she was saying something to it. Lips moved, but the idol swallowed the words. The fish flicked once, twice. Then still, she rose, stepped back, and walked toward the cab without looking again. When she slid inside, the door clicked soft. We can go. I glanced at the bowl left glowing faintly in the headlights. Water caught one last glint before the dark folded it up. Where now? I asked. She gave me a new address. This one final, clear. Uptown. I turned us around. The alley felt tighter leaving than coming in, like it had closed a notch. She didn't watch the streets anymore, just faced forward, shoulders eased the smallest bit. Back at the chain, I lifted it again, the metal biting cold into my fingers. Hooked it neat behind us, sealing whatever that place had been. On the main drag, the city sounded awake again, sirens in the distance, headlights slicing across, steam pushing from grates. But inside the cab, air still carried the weight of that alley. When we pulled up outside a narrow brick building, she folded a bill from her jacket, handed it over without meeting my eyes. "Keep the change." By the time I looked up, she was halfway up the steps, key already in the lock. Doors shut soft behind her, quieter than the hum of the engine. I sat there a beat longer before moving on. Midtown should have been a straight shot, but I dragged the long way, habit maybe, or a head still stuck in that alley. The air held that metallic aftertaste rain leaves behind. Streetlights stretched thin shadows over slick pavement. From under a fading marquee, roasted peanuts scented the air. At night, a red light held me. Across the way, a couple argued under an awning, words muffled by glass and engine. Reflex pulled my eyes to the mirror. Empty, of course. Still, for a second I thought I'd see her there. Bowl in her lap, fish flashing gold. Traffic stayed light. I rolled slower than usual, letting seams in the road thump under the tires. A bus slid past the other way, windows fogged, faces ghosted. Near 34th, I stopped for coffee, paper cup warming my hands, steam curling into the cold. Across the street, a pawn shop sign buzzed and blinked, letters winking out one by one. Back behind the wheel, the cab felt different. Not emptier, just dulled at the edges. The radio had been off since I dropped her. I flicked it on, static, then a slow blues line. It didn't shift the mood, but it kept the quiet from swallowing me whole. Near Union Square, a yellow cab cut in, taillights bleeding across the wet street. I matched pace, caught the other driver's glance in his mirror, then let him peel off. The streets pulled me west, toward the river. That's when it came back, pockets of quiet where the city's noise felt drained away. Under one bridge, orange lamps painted the girders, and I swore I saw the same shimmer the fish had thrown. Not light, movement. On the second I blinked. I shook it off, kept driving, but the night kept circling me back. Old warehouses, cracked murals, windows tagged over and over. At the far end, a figure stepped out of a gap, hood up, hands deep in pockets. As I rolled past, he looked up sharp, like he'd been waiting for someone else, and I'd surprised him instead. The look wasn't hostile, more like recognition. Hard to pin through glass, and I didn't slow to find out. By the time I hit the West Side Highway, river wind shoved the cab in bursts, rattling the antenna. Salt water slipped through the vents, pulling me straight back to that alley, chain clinking shut behind us. And her voice again, the way she'd said it. Not like this. But the night wasn't finished. Something waited past the next turn, and I could feel it in my hands on the wheel. If you've been riding with me this far, hit subscribe, stay in the cab. The next story's already waiting in the dark.